She was hailed as the next Steve Jobs, a Stanford dropout in a black turtleneck who said she could run hundreds of medical tests from a single drop of blood. By 2014, her company, Theranos, was valued at around $9 billion, and Forbes called her the youngest self-made female billionaire in America. 2 years later, that fortune was marked at zero, and a jury would call the whole thing fraud. Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford University in 2003 at the age of 19, convinced she could change the world. She was afraid of needles, and she had an idea that sounded like magic. Instead of vials of blood drawn from a vein, a tiny finger prick, a single drop, could screen a person for hundreds of conditions, cheaply and quickly, in any pharmacy in the country. She called the company Theranos, a blend of therapy and diagnosis. Her pitch was irresistible: democratize healthcare, catch disease early, and end the fear of the needle forever. She wore the black turtleneck like a uniform, spoke in a deep, deliberate voice, and told a story so clean and so hopeful that some of the most powerful people in the country wanted to believe it. At the heart of the dream was a machine. Theranos named it the Edison after the great inventor. It was meant to be a compact, almost magical box that could perform a full menu of blood tests from that one small sample. To investors and partners, the Edison was proof that the future had arrived. What almost none of them were allowed to see was how poorly it actually worked. To silence doubters, Holmes surrounded herself with extraordinary credibility. Her board of directors read like a roll call of American power: former Secretaries of State Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, and the future Defense Secretary, General James Mattis. They were statesmen and generals, not scientists or doctors, but their names alone told the world that Theranos must be real. The media fell in love. Magazine covers crowned her a visionary, the woman who would do for healthcare what Silicon Valley had done for everything else. The comparison to Steve Jobs was everywhere: the turtleneck, the secrecy, the world-changing promise. Investors poured in money. Over its lifetime, Theranos would raise more than $700 million from private backers. By 2014, at its peak, Theranos was valued at roughly $9 billion. On paper, Holmes, who owned about half the company, was worth billions, and Forbes named her the youngest self-made female billionaire in the country. She was 30 years old. The vision had become a fortune. The only thing missing was a machine that actually did what she said it could. In 2013, Theranos struck the deal that would carry it from promise into the real world. It partnered with the pharmacy giant Walgreens to open Theranos wellness centers inside its stores, eventually in more than 40 locations. Now this was no longer just a story told to investors. Real patients were walking in, holding out a finger, and trusting their results to a machine that had never been proven. Behind the gleaming front, something was deeply wrong. According to evidence later presented at trial, the Edison could reliably run only a small fraction of the tests Theranos advertised. To fill the gap, the company quietly ran many samples on modified, conventional analyzers made by other manufacturers, the very machines its revolutionary device was supposed to replace. The miracle, in large part, did not exist. Investors who came for a demonstration were shown the Edison taking their blood and moments later displaying a result. According to evidence at trial, some of those demonstrations were not what they appeared. The device could fail or stall, while a result was produced another way. Visitors left convinced they had watched the future work. They had watched a performance. For the patients in those pharmacies, the stakes were no longer about money. They were receiving real medical results, readings that could shape decisions about their treatment, their medication, their health. And regulators would later find that some of those results could not be trusted. This was the line Theranos had crossed, from selling a dream to investors to handing unreliable blood tests to ordinary people. Inside the company, a few people refused to look away. One of them was Tyler Schultz, a young employee who happened to be the grandson of board member George Shultz. Alarmed by what he saw in the data, he raised concerns, then resigned, and quietly became a source for reporters. His decision would put him at odds with his own grandfather, who at first stood by Holmes. The story finally broke in October 2015. John Carreyrou, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, published an investigation that pulled the curtain back. Theranos, he reported, was running most of its tests on conventional machines, not the Edison, and its results could not be relied upon. Theranos denied everything and threatened to sue, but the question was now in the open, and it would not go away. Then the regulators arrived. In January 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, after inspecting the company's California lab, delivered a damning finding. The facility posed, in their own words, an immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. Months later, the lab's certification was revoked, and Holmes was barred from running a blood testing laboratory. The machine the world had celebrated was now a danger. The partners who had brought Theranos to the public now fled from it. In June 2016, Walgreens terminated its partnership and shut down the wellness centers. Investors who had been told the company was unstoppable watched its value evaporate. Forbes, which had once crowned Holmes a billionaire, now revised her net worth to a single number: 0. The unraveling was total. The $9 billion valuation collapsed to nothing. In March 2018, the Securities and Exchange Commission charged Theranos and Holmes with fraud. She settled, paying a penalty and surrendering control, without admitting or denying the agency's findings. And on September 4, 2018, Theranos announced it would cease operations. The company that promised to change medicine was gone. The reckoning moved from the business pages to a federal courtroom. Holmes was charged with fraud, accused of deceiving the investors who had funded her and the patients who had trusted her tests. For nearly 4 months, jurors heard from former employees, investors, and the whistleblowers who had warned that the technology did not work. Then they delivered their verdict. On January 3, 2022, a jury found Elizabeth Holmes guilty of defrauding investors, 1 count of conspiracy and 3 counts of wire fraud, tied to more than $140 million. On the charges that she had defrauded patients, the jury acquitted her. On 3 further counts, it could not agree. The verdict was narrow, but it was unmistakable. A jury had called Theranos a fraud. On November 18, 2022, Holmes was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. She was ordered, together with her co-defendant, to repay hundreds of millions of dollars to the people she had defrauded. In May 2023, she reported to prison to begin her sentence. The same woman who, less than a decade earlier, had been celebrated as the future of medicine. She had not acted alone. Ramesh Sunny Balwani, the company's president, and at the time her partner, was tried separately. In July 2022, a jury convicted him on all 12 counts of fraud against both investors and patients. He was sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison. The 2 people at the top of Theranos were now both convicted criminals. Theranos became a warning told in business schools and courtrooms alike. The board of statesmen could not make a broken machine work. The magazine covers could not turn a story into a science. In the end, the difference between a visionary and a fraud came down to a single, unforgiving question: did the thing actually work? Theranos answered that question in a courtroom. The verdict was fraud. Fake it till you make it is a Silicon Valley creed. It works in a pitch meeting where the only thing at risk is money. But Theranos sold a promise as a fact and put it in the hands of patients waiting on results that could shape their care. In medicine, that difference can cost a life. The youngest self-made billionaire in America became one of its most infamous convicted fraudsters. Case closed.